Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. One of the people we go to a lot when we're looking for ways of explaining things, because that's one of the things I like to do, is I like to figure out, is there another way to explain something? Is there a way to present this information that is more digestible, that will help people understand? Guy Smith has been my go-to guy for a long time with his website, GunFacts.info, GunFacts.info, and now he has a new book we want to talk about. Welcome, Guy Smith. Hey, Guy, how are you, sir?
I am just great whenever I'm on your program. Now, I want to say something real quick. In this day and age where everyone is shouting and screaming at each other about everything, it is so nice to come onto your program where people can be calm and logical and have civilized discussions.
No, if I didn't do that, my mama would come down from heaven and slap me. So there's that, It's funny. I was at a little gathering last night, and there's a lady there who's a neighbor of ours. And she is such an avid never-Trumper, hates Trump, everything else. I mean, like, we are on polar opposites, and we know it. And we have such a good time together, and we just don't discuss that. We understand that. But other than that, we are really good friends. And that's okay.
Well, and I'm in a similar vein. I have a friend in Burbank, California. He and I agree on nothing. But we go out of our way to dine together and have long and involved conversations where we don't change each other's minds, but at least we get, much broader perspective from the conversation.
Well, also, it's a form of shadow boxing. You get to kind of work on your arguments and your presentations that way, don't you?
Yes, you do. and with what I do with the Gun Facts Project, I'm never at a loss for an opportunity to get into rhetorical fisticuffs with all sorts of people.
Why did you start doing this in the first place?
It's kind of funny. When I was growing up, I lived in part of the world where no one shot each other. It just didn't happen. But I would watch the nightly news, and they were telling a much different story. Well, growing up among scientists and engineers, I became a numbers nut, and I said, well, why is there this difference? And so I started dabbling in criminology. I started searching for gold standard data sources, and eventually it got me up to, a fair amount of understanding. And then one night on the television was a spokesperson for one of the gun policy organizations. Mm-hmm. And they said something which I knew to be 100% incorrect because I'd been looking at the data that morning.
Okay.
And so in my political naivety of the time, I wrote him a letter and said, hey, saw you on the TV, you got your facts wrong. Here's the actual data. You might want to clean up your talking points. And a year later, the same guy was on television again saying the same bunkum. So I kind of took it as a mission to try to get people to quit lying, and in that I have failed miserably. But I have at least gotten enough data up on the web and presented it in a easy-to-digest form that anyone who's searching for the information, they land on my page first.
Well, and let me just say, and you know that I use your stuff all the time. If somebody's looking for information on gun use or murders in various countries, because you'll always hear the whole deal of, well, in industrialized countries, America is number one in murders. And you go, yeah, but what do you call industrialized? Oh, I see. We're going to cherry pick the European countries, but you actually go and get all the data, not the cherry pick data, and just say, look, here it is. You can make up your own mind, but here's the data. But you do it in infographics in ways that are easy for people like me who don't do numbers well. Even I can understand that.
Well, and that's been my goal because, like I like to say, I read all these dense criminology journal papers so that you don't have to. And by taking that and creating a graph or a chart that somebody can latch on to immediately and have that little aha moment, mm-hmm. I consider it public service. And for anyone in your audience who hasn't been by the website, if you see a graphic that you think is interesting, click on it. It will give you a much larger version of that graphic, which you are then free to share on any of the social media you care to.
Okay, so now you have a new book, Guns and Control, a nonpartisan guide to understanding mass public shootings, gun accidents, crime, public carry, suicides, defensive use, and more. What is this?
Well, with this election year, I pretty much believe that there were going to be a lot of people slinging a lot of equine effluvium, and that there were going to be some voters out there in the wilderness who were going, I don't know how to make heads or tails of this. So what I did was I created a book that gives them everything that they need to know in a quick, easy, somewhat breezy read, but that both lays out the gold standard high-level data and they gets just enough into the weeds so that they argue, or so that they understand why the two sides are arguing past each other. And from that, they can then make up their own mind. And when you read the book, one thing you're going to discover is that I don't make a point. I don't try to drive anyone towards a pro or an anti-gun side. I just want them to have reliable data and make up their own minds.
Okay. Loaded question, but I mean, you'll understand where I'm going with this, okay? I clearly come down on one side on this, and I believe that, generally speaking, we on the gun owner side use good data and tend to go with things like the FBI's uniform crime reports, things like that. We actually have the data. It is my impression, and you see where I'm heading with this, my impression is that the gun ban lobby, as I have come to call them, tend to cook the books on data, having watched the Violence Policy Center do that for 25 years and others in that gun ban industry basically lie. It is my impression that they are less than truthful with the data they use. You go right down the middle and you actually go get the real source data. And I always tell people, I'm never going to give you data I get from the NRA. I'm always going to give it to you from CDC or FBI uniform crime reports, or as close as I can get to source data. In your research, in your work, am I off in my impression that these guys cook the books a lot?
Well, in any realm of politics, you're going to find people who either lie or stretch the truth. And in this particular field of study, there have been some world-class book cookers, definitely on the anti-gun side. But I'll tell you an interesting story. I once met Chris Cox, who used to be the head of NRA's ILA,
right.
And I met him at some libertarian think tank event out in San Francisco. And I pulled him aside, and we started talking about statistics and numbers and whatnot. And I said, I watch you guys just as closely as I watch Everytown.
Okay.
And I have trouble with you guys in that I can't catch you very often. Occasionally you'll stretch the truth a bit, but I haven't caught you, just peddling, raw, bad info. And he said, Guy, we can't afford to. In the political climate and the media climate that we're in, if the NRA was ever just to put real bad information out there, they would be pilloried, strung up, drawn and quartered, and their corpses burned.
That makes sense.
And because of that, I think the pro-gun side has been very anal retentive in terms of trying to get it right, because they know if they get it wrong, that they're going to be in trouble. Now, that doesn't keep them from being wrong sometimes. In the book, I tell this one story about a pro-gun person who emailed me and said, mass public shootings as a function of population have been actually going down. In other words, as the population goes up, the number of shootings per capita goes down. And I said, I don't think you're right. And I dug up the numbers, and sure enough, he wasn't right. So both sides can get it wrong, but in history, there have been people paying to create bad data, and I haven't seen a lot of people on the pro-gun side actually paying good money to create bad data.
What's your book? And I'm going to give this out again. It's called Guns in Control. It's by Guy Smith. You can get it off Amazon. What your book really is, for me at least, it is a complete ammo box full of intellectual ammunition of things that people can reach in there and pull out and use on social media, knowing that the research is solid, and not only just solid, but the other part is, and this is the part that I like so much about what you do, you source it and you say, okay, here's the infographic, here's a graph that shows this, but this is where the information came from. Don't take my word for it. This is the Centers for Disease Control. This is the FBI. This is the National Safety Council. This is where I got the information. And that's what makes it super valuable.
Well, and in the book, I teach people a little bit about how to detect bad research, and there's two factors in bad research that recur over and over again. Either the data is bad or the methodology is bad. So throughout the book, I use what I consider to be the gold standard data: FBI Uniform Crime Statistics, World Health Organization suicide statistics, UN Center for Crime and Drugs, I think they're called, who tried to normalize the crime statistics internationally. These are the gold standard data. And what's interesting, and I mentioned this in the book, is that anyone can get this data. You don't need a rocket science degree. You need a browser and to point it at the right data tables online. And in the book, I also say, don't believe anyone, including don't believe Guy Smith. I'm putting out this data here, and you can verify it for yourself. And that way you know that this book is not part of the spin industry.
There you go. Guy, I just want to thank you for what you do. I use it a lot. It's useful. And the point I want to make to people is this is good intellectual ammunition you can use on your social media accounts when you're having discussions where people say, oh, yeah, well, I heard this. And you can go back and say, well, actually, this is where the data is, and this is where you can find it, and this is how it all works. You do an invaluable service. And I just got to say, we appreciate it because a lot of us just rip you off mercilessly.
Well, and when you look at the copyright page on the GunFacts website, I say, rip me off mercilessly. Copy and paste at will.
So there you go. Congratulations on the book. And again, thank you for everything you do. Guy Smith is the author of Guns and Control. Also, you can find out a lot more at gunfacts.info. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you, Tom.